Hello everybody, welcome to the Daily Sip. My name is Oliver and my mission is to bring you closer to organic Japanese green tea, and today we're going to dive into the 5 reasons why Bancha could be a tea for you. So today we're going to have a look at these 5 reasons and have a deep dive into the taste also of Bancha, so that I can explain you how the taste or what do you have to expect from this tea from a taste perspective. So when we're gonna dive into Bancha, let's have a first look at the name. So there are actually 2 origins of the tea and the tea name. One is that it is seen as a simple tea, so Bancha more as seen as a simple tea, everyday tea in Japan. And on the other hand, there's another streamline or another storyline where they say that Ban relates actually to late, and late meaning from later harvest. Sometimes you can even hear the name Akibancha. Akibancha is just meaning that the tea has been picked during the autumn or the last harvest of the year. So there actually are a little bit these 2 different types, and going back to the simplicity or the simple aspect of the tea, it is actually seen as a more simple tea, and therefore it is quite liked as an everyday tea. Often when you go to Japan or you're invited, or even when you go to a sushi bar, might be that you either get a hojicha or you either get a bancha to drink beside the matcha powder. So bancha, everyday tea, which is quite common in Japan. So here we are talking about the second most produced tea in Japan. As you might know, 70% is around the whole tea market is around the sencha type, but when we go to the second type, but there we have quite a massive drop, then we are around 10%, and there we encounter bancha, the everyday tea, which is consumed often after meals, but I'll go later a little bit into that. When we look at the tea, so just have a first glance at the tea leaves. So what you can see is that this tea is a little bit brighter, so it's not this intense typical green color which we know from Japanese green tea, and the leaves, they are not as finely refined. They do not have this needle shape, and it is a little bit a simpler tea also from its aspect of, or from its visual aspect. When we look at which tea leaves are actually used for Bancha, there we are not talking about these very first harvest young leaves, but we are going more into the more coarse, a little bit older, more mature leaves. So these are the leaves which are processed with the tea called Bancha. With this effect, so when we are not talking about the young and very new leaves and early leaves, spring leaves, first harvest leaves, and we talk a little bit about the later harvest, or we talk a little bit about more mature leaves, then actually what we are talking about is that we are talking about tea leaves which do contain less caffeine, because as you might maybe have seen in other videos, me explaining or will explaining the caffeine content in the leaves, the caffeine is actually stimulant which is there to protect the tea leaves against the bugs. So this is mainly applied or maybe in the smaller and the younger leaves, but as soon as the leaves are more mature or they're older, then they don't need this protection anymore because they're not so attractive anymore for the bugs. So the caffeine content automatically goes down. So when we talk about the caffeine content in Bancha, then we are talking about 30 to 40 milligrams. As you might know, sencha is around 50 to 60. It really depends if it is a shaded sencha or unshaded sencha. So normally you can say that half of the content of caffeine is in Bancha versus a sencha. When we talk about coffee, there you can go about a third of the caffeine content which is in a coffee, which you can find then in Bancha or in when you are preparing Bancha. So, as I said, a tea which can be easily drunk in the afternoon, but some people who are not very sensitive to caffeine can even drink it in the evening. I personally can drink it in the evening, and it is a very, very nice tea which has also its properties. And there we go into the second point. What you might know is that when we talk about the first harvest, so the very young leaves, then we talk about a lot of amino acids. Theanine is there, a big subject, and we talk about catechins, polyphenols, how they're also called. So here we are in a tea which has a little bit less caffeine, so one thing also a little bit less, but it contains also a little bit less amino acids than these younger leaves. But in terms of catechins actually, or tannins, this tea carries quite a decent amount with it, as it is also coming from younger leaves, and this amount stays in the tea. Additionally to that, we have quite a good source of minerals, so the more coarse, more mature leaves absorb, or they do contain a little bit more of minerals, and it is also said that it is, for a green tea, quite high in iron, because iron is or Bancha is a rich source in iron. So when we talk about 100 milligrams, there we are even at 48 milligrams of so 100 grams of leaves, 48 milligrams of iron. And the iron amount, certainly it goes down because you're using around 5 grams per serving, doing yourself or preparing yourself 3 to 4 teas. So there we only talk about 2 grams in the end, but just for you to know that this is quite a good source. After what I know is that our daily intake of iron should be between 15 and 18 milligrams, which really depends on the sex you are. So women need a little bit more, guys, so we do a little bit, or we need a little bit less. It is 2 milligrams versus 50 milligrams is only a seventh. So there we talk about the small amount, but if you want to have a tea which is actually good in terms of just in its properties in iron, which is green tea, or which green tea is not too much known for, then definitely Bancha is an option for you. With this aspect, or with this positive aspect which we are talking about in terms of more minerals, also a little bit more this iron, it has quite a decent effect on helping your digestion. So that's why often you see when you have a meal in Japan, or people who have a meal, then they might enjoy a Bancha later. It just helps with the digestion, and it is also known in Japan as a good digestion tea. So definitely an everyday tea you can drink throughout the whole day, even in the evening when you're not too sensitive, and it helps with your digestion after a meal. What I personally like a lot about Bancha, so there we go in point number 3, is that it is alkaline or alkalizing tea. So this tea, in comparison to other green teas which can tend to be a little bit more on the acidic side, this tea is actually an alkalizing tea. So what I personally like a lot is to drink Bancha after my workout, because often you're getting a little bit more of acidity into your body when you're working out, also when you consume proteins, or also processed food is quite an acidic type of food, and then Bancha can actually help you to enjoy a tea which is then helping your body to alkalize more and to get a better balance in your acidity versus alkaline level. So there I personally like Bancha a lot, and in my opinion what I feel especially is that it's pretty decent, or kind of very soft to the stomach. So I really feel that this tea has a little bit more of smoothness in terms of effect on the body. So that's why when I have a day which has been very stressful, or when I have been to the gym where also I'm stressing physically my body, then often I try, or I want to enjoy a Bancha. In terms of taste, and there I want to go into a little bit the tasting of this tea, is that it is also often a tea which is quite liked by beginners. The reason is that this tea has not such a strong note of this typical little bit spinachy, this a little bit more greener taste, and it is quite a soft and decent entrance into the world of Japanese green tea. So when you're a beginner and you're really looking for a tea which you might want to try as a first tea, then Bancha definitely is an option. Often you see Bancha also in another form, and this is in the Genmaicha form. So this is actually Bancha, though the leaves we see here, mixed with puffed rice or with roasted rice, and then you consume a Genmaicha. This is often a tea which is very much liked from beginners, because also there, as you use the Bancha, not too much caffeine. You even bring down the caffeine content a little bit more thanks to the balancing out with the roasted rice, and then you just have a different flavor profile. With the Genmaicha I get much more a little bit of a cereally and popcorn flavor profile. Here with this one here, I definitely also get this a little bit more greener aspects, a little bit wooden flavor as well, a little bit more of a smoother flavor in my opinion with the Bancha. But let's go into the tasting of this tea. So the preparation is super easy. So when we are taking 5 grams of this tea, which I prepared already, and I heat now my water on 70 degrees Celsius. The good thing is with Bancha that if you like hotter teas, this is a tea which absolutely can be brewed also at 80 or 90 degrees Celsius. So for the Americans here, 70 degrees Celsius is around 165 Fahrenheit. When we go higher, then we are around 175 to 180 Fahrenheit. So there, this is actually the temperature, or this is a tea which can be brewed at different temperatures easily without it getting astringent or undrinkable. Because some senchas, when you brew them too hot, they release a lot of catechins, they release a lot of astringent flavor profiles, and then the tea is too astringent. And often we hear people telling us, I do not like green tea because it's too astringent. This is mainly due to the fact then when green tea is brewed at a too hot temperature. But with this one here, you're quite good. It's quite easy to brew it. 1 minute is actually enough. You can also go up to 2 minutes. So these are very, very decent leaves for beginners. There's no stress about how long you have to brew it. Even when you overbrew it a little bit, the effect on the brewing itself is not too strong. So a very, very simple tea, and a very good tea to start your tea journey with. So I have brewed it now a little bit more than a minute. And what we can see already when we have a look at the liquor of this tea, so we see that the tea is not this typical, doesn't have this very typical intense green color, but it is a little bit more golden in the aspect when you brew the tea. So a tea which is not in this typical intensity of this shiny green where you, for example, find the Fukamushi green teas, but also a typical sencha can show a little bit more of an intense, more intense green color. Here you're really into a beautiful golden, nearly yellowish orangey color profile, and as you can see, quite or a little bit different to this normal or kind of more intense green Fukamushi teas. So let's have a sip of this tea. So what you get, or what I always get when I drink this tea, is just a very nice sweet wooden note. So there's a little bit this sweet wood which you can buy in pharmacies. It always reminds me of that. It is a very decent kind of, there is a slight kind of a greener or green note behind it, but it's a little bit more moving into late summer grass notes, into a little bit of a slightly drier haze note as well. So it's for me a lot centered a lot about a little bit more of a wooden, a little bit more of a late summer grass and hay note. So this is where I situate this tea, but there's not an astringency with it, so you don't get any floral notes or anything. It's really centered around this note. So it's for me also a little bit a lower energetic tea, so it's very calming, very smoothing and soothing also to the body. So a tea which I really like more when I'm getting into a kind of a little bit more of a smoother and not a stressful phase in the day, and this is mostly in the late afternoon or evening time, and this is when I mostly enjoy a cup of Bancha. But it has a very kind of, still it has a very beautiful kind of broad aspect. So you get this slight wooden, young wooden notes, then a little bit of these green notes, but more in the late summer grass as I described before, and quite a decent amount of sweetness, but it's always a kind of a wooden sweetness, so it's never kind of this real kind of, sometimes even fruity notes which you get from a fukamushi when you're going into more of the mango or nearly pineapple notes. It never goes that far. It's always around this little smooth, sweet, wooden, young wooden notes, which I'm getting a lot with this tea. But now I'm curious to see how the second brewing tastes. So then we are here in point number 4, and then I will make with this second brewing the 4th point, which is quite important, or which is quite interesting about Bancha, and this is that the price is also quite low. Meanwhile, when we talk about the Gyokuro, very high class, there we can even say that around 5 grams there you are between $1.50 or nearly $2, so per serving. With for example, if we go, I have to go back. So the Gyokuro high quality is actually, there we are talking nearly about $3. So sometimes you get for $50, $40 for 50 grams. So there we are with 5 grams, so around $4 for 3 cups. When we go into the Sencha, I would say about, it turns around 25 to 30 to $35. It really depends what quality it is. Let's say $30. So there we are with the 5 grams, we are between 1 and 150 for 3 different cups. But here we really drop the price to half of it. So you can find Banchas which are about 12 or around 12 to $13, or which are around 15 to 16 to $17 for 100 gram, really depending from where you buy it from, and if it's from an organic source or if it is from a conventional cultivated tea source. So quite a good and quite an affordable tea. So there we have a tea which you can not only drink every day, but it's quite affordable. So it is actually really a good tea if you want to start your journey in the world of Japanese green tea. So definitely a good tea. But now let me have a second tasting of the second brewing. So the stronger wooden notes, they go a little bit back, so the tea gets a little bit finer, more sweet, so there's stronger sweetness even in the second brewing. There's even, it wins a little bit in density, in terms of texture. It becomes a little bit bolder, but very smooth, bold, smooth. It may be a contradiction, but here I'm really kind of, in terms of this bolder, I'm talking about a little bit more of this density, so it gets a little bit denser. It kind of goes a little bit in bigger drops over your tongue. And in terms of sweetness, it just, in terms of the taste or the sweet taste, it wins a little bit. So very, very nice tea, which you can enjoy during the afternoon, evening, or even in the morning. So when you're very sensitive to caffeine, definitely a very good tea you can start with, or you're a beginner to Japanese green tea. And now I get all the music here in a lovely summer day in Switzerland. Thanks a lot for watching. I guess I will just say goodbye, and if you ever have a question, do not hesitate, write us a comment. We are more than happy to answer your questions. See you and bye bye.